Hello and welcome to another beginner's video. In this video I'm going to show you what tools I feel I could not live without. And well, some of them you might guess, others might be a bit of a surprise. So I'm going to point the camera down at the desk and go through those tools that I've collected in front of me that I use most often for terrain making. So what you see in front of you is the items I've collected together to answer the question, what tools couldn't you live without, do you think? Now there is one noticeable thing missing, which I'll come to at the end, but this is pretty much it. Let me go through what we have here. First of all, PVA, top of the list. I have my small bottle of PVA here, which I refill from my large one over here, the Classmates PVA, and then on the far end in the yellow you can see I've got Contractors PVA, and I use that a lot for mixing and making up my terrain paint and my terrain glue. So that is for me the star of the show. I use it on pretty much every build, and I don't know what I would do without it, so I really couldn't hobby without it. The next thing that's really useful is two different types of knife. I use a Stanley knife because I find that really useful for larger cuts, and I've got a selection of razor blade knives or X-Acto knives or whatever you want to call them, and these also are super useful for terrain builds. They're also useful for miniature painting, miniature building, but I use them quite a lot for the more detailed cuts. But frankly the Stanley knife gets most of my loving for cutting. Here we have a selection of metal rules. You can see we've got three here of different sizes. This came in a pack. I've got this long 60cm one, which is really useful. I've got a 90-degree angle here, and this is a really useful thing that I would recommend everyone get. If you're going to be using a Stanley knife, get yourself a safety cutting metal ruler. I use that a lot, and it prevents me from slicing my fingers open. What we have coming across here and along the back is cheap brushes. These brushes here I use all the time, and they are cheap brushes from a supermarket, and they are fantastic for working on terrain. So I have a lot of them, and the other thing I've got quite a lot of, some of them are in a wash or scattered around, but these are decorators brushes. They're not anything special. You can buy 50p or whatever, or 50 cents, and they're really good for doing terrain, painting large areas of terrain. Next to it is a simple dining room knife, normal cutlery, and I use that for stirring, for scraping, and for other things. It being metal, it cleans up really nicely, and it means that I can mix anything I want to, get it in the wash, and it will be good as new. At the back we have a measuring cup, and we've got another measuring cup here. These are really useful. I use them all the time. I'm doing a lot of casting at the moment with plaster, or I use polyfiller mix, and you'll find they're really useful to have some measuring pots. And I have more than these, but I would suggest that if you're only on a budget, you get a smaller one and you get a larger one, and that should be sufficient. Here I've got a plastic spoon. That might seem a little bit of a funny thing, however I find it very, very useful, because often I'm measuring out paint or whatever, and I can get exactly the correct quantity, one scoop or two scoops, and put the paint in for a mix, and it's good when you're working in large quantities. Now the final thing, which is not in here, which I know that you're expecting to see, are my clamps. Now I have a number of different types of clamp. These ones here are really useful for instant grabs, and I've got them in several different sizes. They are rapidly becoming very, very much an important part of my hobbying. However, the most important part is these. I use these all the time, and I have a large collection, and I would say that I can never have too many of these. When you're building terrain, or when you're building, for example, if you're gluing two things together, it's so useful to have these. They operate with one hand, so you can be holding with one hand and you can clamp with the other and tighten it up. They're easy to, you don't over squeeze. The problem I've had with these is because they're spring clamps, there's no kind of decision on how strongly this end is going to join together. So if you're looking at only wanting to hold something very lightly, then they're not going to be ideal. But these ones you can just pull to exactly the place you want, and then that will hold whatever you're attempting to glue together in place very, very safely without damaging. Now obviously there's loads and loads of other tools that I have. I have a huge collection, and the reason for that is have the right tool for the job. If you have the wrong tool, then you're probably going to make a mistake, or it's not going to be as good quality as you can. I'll close it off with a bonus item, which I wasn't going to show you, but I actually really think I should. I also own and have bought a large quantity of these cooling trays. This is from the baking section in your supermarket. And the reason I've got these, you can see this is covered in paint and all sorts of gunk. If you're spraying something, then you can carry around and move it around without getting in your way. If you're building something and you want to lift it off the floor, off your bench, you can put a number of these underneath it. I've been doing that on the build I'm doing at the moment for the temple, and I sit them on top of these, and they're just so useful. You can get them multiple sizes and multiple sizes of the squares, and I have loads of these, and that's something else which actually really should be on the primary list of couldn't live without it. I use them all the time. So there we are. That's the tools I would suggest that you should have if you're going to start making terrain. A good knife, a good safety ruler, a bunch of PVA, some cheap brushes, measuring containers, and of course clamps. So there we are. There's a look inside the mind of Beard Clipper and a view on what I think is the minimum that you should have if you're going to be starting to make terrain. Now, the thing that I would say is, this is my opinion. I'm very happy for other people to think of different things, and if there's something that you couldn't live without, then please do pop it in the comments. I'd be fascinated to hear different opinions on this. Certainly I don't think I could do anything that I do without those things I've just shown you. A good cutting mat, a good bench and that sort of thing, space. You can get away with that, but having good safety equipment, making sure you're not going to slice your finger open, is a good thing, especially when you're making a lot of stuff, and good PVA will get you a long way. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling now. Please do pop any comments below and let me know what you think. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. I would love to see those numbers go up, and don't forget to ding the bell so that whenever I publish a video, YouTube does tell you. And I will sign off as I always do by thanking you so very much for watching Beard Clipper.